And in most individuals, 2 X chromosomes meant female, and an X and a Y meant male. But as lab techniques improved, researchers learned this wasn't the whole story. As more people's genes were studied, there began to be exceptions to the rule. First, there were people like Marilyn, who were XY, but female. Then later, subjects who were XX, but male.
Hi Ross, how did the sequencing job go?
Research teams started hunting for what really makes men different from women by studying the DNA of the rare XX males.
They were male because they'd inherited a small fragment of the Y chromosome which was too small to see with a microscope, but could be seen with DNA techniques.
This fragment of Y was small enough to be a single gene. Could that one gene be the switch that makes a man? A scientific race then began to pin down this potential male-making gene. Goodfellow's team found a gene they called SRY. To test it, his colleagues used the gene to try to change the sex of a mouse.
They added the SRY gene to the nucleus of a mouse embryo which otherwise would have been female. And when those mouse embryos grew up, they were male. So just this single gene is capable of transforming you from being an XX female into an XX male.
How can one gene have such a profound effect, able literally to change a girl into a boy? The answer lies in the first few weeks of an embryo's life, when it possesses a small group of cells able to become either ovaries or testes. In embryos with 2 X chromosomes, and so no SRY gene, the cells become ovaries, and the female body plan develops. But if the primitive gonad cells do contain the SRY gene, then it acts like a control gene, switching on other genes that turn the cells into testes cells. The testes then produce the hormone testosterone, which spreads through the body, telling all the other cells the embryo will be male.
I sometimes think it's remarkable that we're talking about a few thousand cells for perhaps 48 hours during development is all that it takes to convert the female body form into the male body form.
So if it weren't for this single gene acting in the right place at the right time, we would all be female. This also explains how some women can be XY. Their Y chromosome is missing the SRY gene, so the male switch is never activated. Because we possess the ability to take either the male or female pathway, a simple definition of gender is often difficult. And this has caused problems for those who have tried. Since the early 1960s, athletic authorities have been concerned about men passing themselves as women.
This fantastic performer, 16 stone, 27-year-old engineer, and there she goes.
After several unsuccessful attempts to introduce a sex test, which included asking female athletes to parade naked in front of a panel of doctors, at the 1968 Mexican Olympics, the authorities thought they'd found the answer. They settled on something called the bar body test. A scraping of cells from the inside of the cheek is stained and examined under the microscope. They were looking for the presence of the second X chromosome, because that, they assumed, was the only true test of a woman. And despite the growing scientific realization that there is more than one track from chromosomes to gender, the Olympics retained this test until 1992. More than one female athlete failed the test and had her career ruined. Then, at the Albertville Winter Olympics, the authorities adopted the latest scientific marker for sex, the SRY gene. But most scientists including SRY's discoverer, believe the search for a definitive test of gender is foolish.
The people who are doing this haven't really thought what it is that they're testing for. In my belief is what they're testing for is testosterone levels, because it's the production of that hormone which makes you have big muscles. And that level of testosterone can be quite unrelated to whether you have an SRY gene or not. So one example would be those XY women who have an SRY gene which has been mutated, so it can't work. Those individuals are women, and yet they would be excluded from the Olympics. So I don't believe we should use genetic sex testing in athletics.
No simple test exists to define gender. By insisting on a genetic test in the name of fairness, athletic authorities may be unfairly discriminating against athletes who, by all other criteria, are clearly women.